joined today by Joseph Kaufman. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Just wanted to ask you a few questions about your new book. First of all, what's the title?
The book is called The Legend of Cosmo and the Archangel.
And before we get into what the book's about, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, my name is Joseph Kaufman, and I'm from Pittsfield, Massachusetts originally. I was born and raised in a small town, a GE town, in fact, of about 50,000 people. Now it's about 40,000 people. I was born and raised in a small town, and my father was born and raised in a small town, and my grandparents were there, and my great-grandparents were there, and we're all buried in the Pittsfield Cemetery. And so we've been there over 100 years in this small little place. And now I live in Jerusalem. I'm married with 4 kids and grandchildren, and we live in a religious neighborhood called Har Nof. And my wife is one of the veterinarians at the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo. And I am a rabbi in a yeshiva, and I am a hedge fund manager, and I write.
So tell us what The Legend of Cosmo and the Archangel is about.
The book is about a group of 5 friends, 4 boys and a genius girl, who grow up together in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and go to Woodstock High School together and Woodstock together, and what happens to them. The story begins in the late 60s and concludes in the mid to late 90s. It's about a group of people who are, in fact, are about 5 or 6 years older than myself. I'm 54. And it's about a group of, about the baby boomers who are like the next level up from in age from where I'm at.
And the characters are based on real people?
No, they're not. They're imagined people.
What was the inspiration or the genesis that spawned the book?
The genesis of Cosmo and the Archangel. Funnily enough, the one genesis of the story was how, in fact, I did not go to Woodstock. And I was 13 years old in 1969, and it was a Friday afternoon, and I was a junior counselor at a summer camp, and my senior counselor, a fellow named David Weeks, was about 18, 19 years old at the time, and David Weeks said to me, "How would you like to go to Woodstock?" So I said, "Great, what's Woodstock?" So he said to me, he said, "Woodstock, it's a music festival, man." So I said, "Who's playing?" He said, "What do you mean, who's playing?" Jefferson Airplane, Santana, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Jethro Tull, The Who, right? Who wasn't playing? So he said, "Do you want to go?" I said, "When are you going?" He says, "I'm going right now." I said, "Right now?" He says, "Right now." I said, "Right now?" He said, "Right now." "You want to go?" I said, "How can I go? I guess my mother first." So he said, "Get out of here, you Jewish kid." And he went off to Woodstock, and I didn't go to Woodstock. So it created in me a certain jealousy of that age group, that it was a certain denied opportunity. And yet at the same time, it was a certain jealousy of a maturity, at least this is what occurred to me later on, a certain maturity that generation had that that my age group didn't have, because 5 years difference at that time in 1969 was a big deal difference in age, because they had to deal with, this generation had to deal with the Vietnam War and the draft and the major cultural and political and social shifts in the United States, the sexual revolution, women's lib, just a huge, huge change of everything. And that paradigm shift, I think, matured them very, very early and very substantially in a way that I don't think I matured and my friends matured in the same way. So therefore, that was interesting to me, and I therefore wanted to write about that.
Is there a character based on you, like a younger character that doesn't get to go?
No, there's not.
Tell us about your writing, education, your background, your influences, and what moves you to write.
In writing, okay. I was raised in a very literate household. My mother was a big reader and remains a big reader, a very literate woman, and my father actually went for a PhD in literature at the University of Michigan. Didn't graduate because they had to go back into the family business, which was KB Toys, but did complete all his coursework and started his thesis on Melville. As a matter of fact, Moby Dick. When Moby Dick was written, about 5 minutes from my house, that's where Melville wrote the book. At any rate, so I grew up in a very literate household, didn't watch much TV. Had a great writing teacher in 9th grade named Mr. Benson, who was an ex-Marine. a tough guy with a sensitivity, and I used to read Bernard Malamud extensively in junior high school and high school. Went to University of Vermont, realized as a pre-med student, realized within one day that was not going to happen, and then just went into writing. And I wrote with a fellow named David Huddle up there, who was still a writing teacher at the University of Vermont. And then after my second year at University of Vermont, so I had a girlfriend at the time who was transferring to Vassar, who was going to art for art history, and I realized I was going to be all by myself, and I therefore wanted a better education, I feel, than I was getting. I was jealous that she was going to Vassar. And I'd always loved Bernard Malamud, and I said, why don't I go to Bennington College and write with Bernard Malamud? So I applied. It was a girls' school. I just turned into a co-ed school, but it was mostly a girls' school. And I applied and I got in, had to submit some writing. And he became my writing rebbe, and he was very wonderful to me. He came to my wedding and wrote me letters and took me out to dinner and read my fiction, and I used to go to his house and visit him, and he was wonderful to me. He was a very fine man and very wonderful to me. I always called him Mr. Malamud. And that was a big influence to me, because he was a very serious artist, and I don't think I've ever met such a man who was so serious about his art. And after that, I just wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I have a published book, a first published novel called A Good Protected Life, which is published by Walker, which is a division of Random House. And this book is published by French Creek Press, and a publisher who I might say I'm very happy with. They're a small startup, but it's not a vanity press, but they're very aggressive about marketing the book, and I'm very enthusiastic publishers, and that's good for a writer. That's the basic. This is actually a picture of someone falling off a cliff, which actually occurs a couple times in the book. Two people actually leap off cliffs. So this is a very wonderful photograph that we were able to find from Crystal Wright Photography in Australia. And this is the book, a nice coffee book table object, a great present for whomever you like, and we hope a good read all at the same time.
This person is wearing a parachute, right?
This person is wearing a parachute, although it doesn't look like it, so it has a certain drama to it.
What is it like to be a fictional writer in the religious Orthodox Jewish world?
That's a very good question. What is it like to be a fiction writer in the Orthodox world? Well, I would have to say that the Orthodox world probably views it as a very utilitarian thing. Like, if I'm successful, they'll embrace it, and if I'm not successful, okay, the kid needs to express himself. So that's, I think, the attitude toward it. Creativity, true originality in the arts is not one of the great values of the Orthodox world. I'm not sure it should be, but it certainly isn't. And whereas Talmudic scholarship and piety is really that's the modus operandi of the religious world, which is, again, as it should be. So I don't really feel I certainly don't get much support or encouragement from the firm world, but I don't expect it either. And I have my few friends who in that world who are supportive.
You don't feel outcast, though?
Oh, no, because I try to fit in. I try to be a good guy.
Beautiful. Great. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, thank
Absolute
you.
Pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Matthew, and you should be well, and we should all have good luck in our lives, and mazel, and blessing.
The book should do well.
Thank you.
Many more books to come.
Thank you very much. Take that as a blessing.